Hello students, we will be continuing with what we have been discussing in the last class, that is on adolescent issues and its management. So let me take your attention to what we have discussed in the last class. Very briefly we shall look into it because today's class is a continuation of what we have discussed in the last class. Adolescent issues we have seen ranges from mental issues or illegal behavior, physical illness, sexual abuse, substance abuse, then suicide and depression tendencies among adolescents, then problems of adjustment, then impact of social media, a wrong portrayal of models. All these are the common adolescent issues or problems that an adolescent is bound to face in the society. And we have also seen that a close link between the family, school and community is the only way to protect the adolescents from these pitfalls. And we have seen some of the ways in which an adolescent can be protected, can be supported and can be prevented from being a prey to these social evils. And first and foremost, we said the primary agency, namely family, has to provide a conducive environment, a proper support for the adolescent. And then we have also seen the resources from the community. The services of the community should be identified and integrated with the school programs so as to stimulate, so as to complement the school programs. Then again, the parents and the teachers both play an equally important role in developing the seeds of self-discipline in the child right from a young age, so that by the time they move on to an adolescent stage, they become fully self-disciplined. So they know where to exercise their rights, how much of their rights should be exercised in a particular circumstance. So self-discipline, development of self-discipline. Then again, to prevent unwanted frustration in the adolescents, setting up of realistic goals we have also seen. So realistic goal setting, that becomes the priority of not only a teacher but even a parent, because both of them, parent as well as the teacher, are equally important caregivers who understand the adolescent. So helping them to set realistic goals. Then again, making them aware through various awareness programs what exactly are the problems that they might encounter in the society. So awareness programs regarding the do's and don'ts will also equip an adolescents to be more cautious as they move towards adulthood. Then again, in every school, an effective counseling program headed by a well-trained counselor can work wonders, because very often the adolescents do not find someone in whom they can confidently disclose their problems, and that can always be a counselor. So a counselor and counseling program can also help the adolescent to manage these adolescent issues. Then again, adolescent is a stage where their energy level is at the peak, and we are living in a society where there are plenty of career options. So make the adolescent aware of these career options so that they can choose one according to their attitude, according to their aptitude, and can channelize their energy more productively. So these are some of the ways, and moreover we have also seen how the elders, that can include the parent or the teacher or any responsible member of the society, how they can model an adaptive behavior before the adolescent. So these are some of the ways in which an adolescent can be protected against these social evils. So this is what we had discussed in the last class, and today we shall take up the issue of depression and suicide among adolescents, which is on a causing a rising alarm in the society among the adolescent community. So this is one of the most prominent among the adolescent issues, in fact. So today we shall be making a discussion on depression and suicide. And when we discuss on this adolescent issue, friends, keep in mind, in our capacity as teachers, we are supposed to find out whether any student, any adolescent student in among our audience suffers from these problems of depression. And it is not a very easy task. So we need to understand what exactly is meant by the tendency of depression or suicidal tendency among adolescents. What exactly are the symptoms exhibited by such children, and what can be the solution, and what is the chief cause, what are the causative factors that lead to such kind of tendencies among adolescents. And before we discuss on what exactly are the symptoms of this kind of mental disorders, we need to understand what exactly is depression. We have come across, in the recent past, we have come across these terms in various contexts. In fact, this is a term which has become used and misused. Depression, as the term itself suggests, it is a mental disorder. It is a mental illness. And as you know, a desirable level of stress and strain is always expected of us, because that will help us to be more prepared in the task that we perform. But when this stress and strain crosses beyond the limit, when they form larger, deeper layers of despair and anxiety, then we call it as a mental disorder or depression. So, larger depression is larger or deeper layers of anxiety and despair. And when these deeper layers of anxiety and despair tends to settle down in the minds of an individual, in the long run, it leads to mental disorders which we commonly call as depression. And as per statistics, it is seen that these depression, the tendency of depression in the long run will lead to suicidal thoughts. And ultimately, it may lead to untimely loss of precious lives. And statistics reveal that the suicidal thoughts happen to be more among the female gender, but the death caused due to suicides happen to be more in the male gender. And as far as men are concerned, this death on account of suicides happen to be a silent epidemic. It happens to be a silent epidemic. But our concern is not all these. How do we designate, how do we describe depression and suicide? Our concern is how to protect our young generation from being falling a prey to depression and suicide. So, larger, deeper layers of anxiety and despair is what we call as depression. And we need to examine what are the symptoms that a student with such tendency exhibit. And when we discuss on the symptoms, friends, let me make it very clear, once in a while, these symptoms are exhibited by each one of us, depending upon our mental or physical state, depending upon the situations or circumstance. So that doesn't mean that once you spot such kind of symptoms in a student of yours, you do not jump into conclusion and say that the child is suffering from bouts of depression. But only when these symptoms tend to persist in the child, and when you notice that a child who has been earlier devoid of these behavioral patterns, all of a sudden has started showing these symptoms, and that too on a regular basis getting more worse rather than being reduced, then we need to give more attention to the child and interfere as soon as possible. So let us see what are the common symptoms of depression, because as teachers we need to be very much aware of what are the symptoms exhibited when a child undergoes depression. First of all, loss of pleasure. Usually, children who find happiness in certain activities, all of a sudden when they start losing their pleasure even in those activities, we tend to have an added eye on such children. Usually it is said that when teacher teaches in the class, this symptom of loss of pleasure is seen in most of the students. It's a common symptom. So jokes apart, when children tend to lose happiness even in those activities which were earlier a source of pleasure for them, that can be taken up. And when that symptom tends to persist, it can be taken up as a symptom of depression. Then truancy, T-R-U-A-N-C-Y, truancy. That is called unauthorized absence. This, I think we have already discussed this term, truancy, truant. A child who remains absent from the class without the permission of the concerned. Such a child is labeled as a truant, T-R-U-A-N-T, truant. And truancy is the tendency of the child to remain absent. Maybe the student packs for school but does not reach school or makes himself or herself absent from school without the consent of the concerned. So this kind of truant behavior or this truancy can again be doubted as the starting point of mental disorder or depression. Then again, what is called fatigue or tiredness, a general tiredness that can again be attributed as yet another symptom of depression. Then we can say what else, changing pattern of food and sleep, changing pattern, either the food habits or the sleep pattern. Too much of food or a loss of interest or appetite in the intake of food. Sleep pattern, again too much of sleep or inability to sleep properly. That is again yet another symptom. Then we can also say aggression. Then at times they start showing self-blame, tendency to blame oneself, self-blame, tendency of helplessness, not able to do anything, being dependent on someone, helplessness. Then other than that, so aggression, usually children, even those children who are basically very quiet in nature, tends to be very aggressive all of a sudden. So this again can be doubted as a case of symptom of depression. Then fall in grades. Then mood swings, sudden changes in their behavioral pattern. At one time they might be happy and within no time, without any specific reason, they might turn very hostile, very angry, very aggressive, mood swings. Then these children tend to show a tendency for social isolation. Usually adolescent is a stage where they prefer the company of their peers. But suddenly when they show the tendency for social isolation, isolating themselves from the rest of the peers, this is again cause a symptom of depression. Then frequent frequent tearfulness, that is always becoming emotional for no valid reason, for no strong reason. Even on flimsy ground they start crying. Emotionally they become very weak. Then thoughts of suicide. At times, children with whom may share with their close friends or with someone whom they open up their thoughts of suicide. So all these are some of the symptoms that a depressed mind may exhibit. But here again we have to underline once again, these symptoms once in a while appearing or disappearing can never be concluded as a case of depressed mind. But when these symptoms start appearing in children who were very much normal earlier, and when these symptoms tend to persist or at times start getting worse, we need to doubt whether the child is suffering from a depressed mind. And what exactly, if you look at what exactly is the cause for this depression, it can be partly an illness of the mind, which arises due to the circumstance, and partly it is biological in nature, maybe due to physical illness. So partly an illness of the mind and partly biological, maybe due to certain physical illness that may in turn affect their mental well-being. So that is basically the reason. And to enumerate the reasons, some of the common reasons behind a depressed mind, we can say, first of all, parental discord in the family, the conflicts in the family between the parents, parental discord, or divorce between the parents, divorced parents. So that can be one reason for depression among children. Then loss of a dear one, loss of a dear one. A person who has been very dear to them in their life, a sudden loss, a sudden death of a dear one in the family may also lead to a state of depression. Then you can say sexual abuse, since it is adolescent community, sexual abuse or verbal abuse, when children get verbally and sexually abused. At this stage, a verbal abuse causes much embarrassment to children when they are verbally abused or sexually abused, and these thoughts they try to bury deep down in their mind, and that in due course of time may surface in the form of depression. Then we can say peer pressure. Peer pressure is yet another factor that may lead to, that may be a cause for depression. Then expectations by expectation, we can say not mere expectation, over expectation by either parent or the teacher may cause a burden for the child. Over expectation by the parent or the teacher. Unhealthy competition prevailing. Disappointment. Disappointment can be yet another factor. Disappointment, that is, they might have expected to reach certain heights, but when they are not able to reach the set goals, this happens when the goals set are not realistic enough. So disappointment is yet another reason that may make the mind depressed. So these are some of the most commonly affecting factors that in due course of time leads to a depressed state of mind. So what can be done? As a teacher, what help can be done? The first and foremost is, as teachers, what we do is we can detect these problems, and maybe if we find that there is something wrong with the child, we can inform the concerned, so as to help the child to overcome this problem. But first and foremost, we need to inform the concerned, and the child should be given proper medication, maybe the help of a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist. So proper medication becomes the first and foremost solution, because it is beyond the hands of a teacher to help a child. There are situations, depending on the nature of the problem, there are situations where a counselor or a teacher can have a personal one-to-one talk with the child and help the child to overcome the problem. But in most of the cases, we find that a depressed mind, if it has to be revived back, it needs the help of an expert, a trained personnel in the field. And the medication, along with behavioral therapy, individual therapy, can do wonders. But why I stressed on this factor is because even among the educated section of the society, parents have a tendency to hush it up. To such mental illness, they try to keep it within the four walls of their home. And only when the problem gets to its worst and moves beyond their capacity do they think about seeking the help of a doctor. Physical illness, just like physical illness, we should understand that with proper medication, this is again an illness of the mind, but we do not realize that there is a social stigma attached to a family where the child suffers from mental illness. So this shell has to be broken, if the child has to be helped, and if we feel that there is a need of a clinical help, that should not be denied to the child, because that is the greatest way in which we can bring back normalcy in the child. So proper medication with therapy, either individual therapy or behavior therapy. Then yet another factor is negotiated. As a teacher, what we can do is negotiated attendance. See, children who suffer from such problems may not be able to make themselves present in the class on a regular basis. Even though there are set rules and norms for every educational institution, these norms are after all meant for the welfare of the child. So there is no harm in providing a negotiated attendance. If the child is not a regular, he or she may be exempted from a regular attendance. So negotiated attendance can be one more aspect. Then again, setting short-term and long-term goals for the child. Long-term and short-term goals. See, short-term goals will help the child to attain their the full ability to the maximum possible. So this will create a level of motivation in the child. That is the purpose of setting short-term goals which are easily attainable. And then once the child feels that yes, there is nothing wrong with me, I am able to set goals and attain the same, they can be made to attain their long-term goals. Then again, making them realize their abilities and skills. Make them realize that they too are skilled. They too have their own potential and ability. They are no less than the others. So make them realize their abilities and skills. Then make adjustments. Make adjustments for these children in the classroom. Maybe as a result of medication, there may be lack of concentration, their mood swings should be adjusted. So all these adjustments according to the needs of these children should be provided. Teacher should understand, even if the child is not able to regularly be present in the class, or sudden mood swings, all these should be adjusted at least at the initial stages. So these are some of the ways in which you can, or we can as teachers, help these children and protect them from tendencies of depression, which in the long run, if goes unattended, will lead to suicide. Thank you.